Great. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining into our second masterclass in the online series. It was wonderful to see the response we got last week, and I think about 170 people who joined in, and I think we got very good feedback from the first session. And we're really hopeful that you will enjoy this one as well, and we look forward to your feedback after the session. So thank you for that. A couple of announcements. During the course of the class, no photograph, screenshot, audio or video recording shall be taken. We are recording this, so it will be on LinkedIn and other social media posts. No content which the speaker is going to present shall be used by you in any online or offline content that you create. Yeah. During the course of this class, you may type in your questions in the chat box, and we will take them at the end of the session. So let me introduce Meera Srinivasan to you, who has been in the industry for close to 25 years. And much of these 25 years, she's been an extremely close colleague and friend of mine. She has probably one of the most unique abilities to blend in a strong nutrition science with business and consumer needs. And I think that's been the most unique thing that I've found about Meera over the last 25 years that I've known her. Meera worked with Unilever for 15 years, heading the nutrition function for South Asia, and was with M&M Mars USA for 3 years. She has a master's degree in food and nutrition from WCC in Chennai and a master's in food technology from the Texas A&M University in USA. Thank you so much, Meera, for leading this masterclass, and now it's over to you.
Hello, everyone, and Rinka, thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon. I was just thinking, at least with this pandemic, there are some positives. I think we're able to take a breather from our hectic lifestyle and share our learnings in different forums. I think these platforms were available to us even before, but we are fully utilizing it now. I think I shouldn't say thanks to the pandemic, but at least let's say some positives about the pandemic. I want to talk to you today about claims from both a creative and FSSAI perspective. When we think of the word claim, usually immediately thinks about nutrient content, protein, fiber, or calcium is good for bones. I mean, everything very science related pops up. I mean, the word claim, we always make it very technical sounding, or at least those are our initial thoughts. What I thought I would do today is talk about what is a claim, look at claim types from a creative lens perspective. So what are the different kinds of claims we can make? Of course, we cannot ignore regulation. So we'll also look at the FSSAI categorization of claims. And if most of you from the industry, you will be familiar with it. And we will quickly touch upon how to support claims. So that's what we're going to broadly cover in the next 30 to 40 minutes. Now, like I said, claims, of course, we have to worry about the regulation, but it's actually a fine balance between creativity and regulation. If you're going to be so technical about your claim, it's just not going to connect or jive with the consumer. So you have to have claims which are creative, maybe have some emotional connect with the consumer, but at the same time meet your regulation. So it's always a fine balance where we are talking about creative claims versus what meets the regulation. Now, what is a claim? Like I said, we always think about very nutrient content-led claims, but actually anything you tell about your product is a claim. It could be words, it could be images, it could be logos, endorsements, anything at all. So whatever you say about your product is actually a claim, and it is just not those words written on front of your pack. And like I said, it is not only about nutrients. It can be about ingredients. It can be about the sensorials of the product, how your product is made. And of course, if you've added something and it has a clear benefit, you want to talk about it. So anything you want to talk about the product is actually a claim. And of course, it can be a factual story. Maybe you can prove it, say, okay, this much fruit or this much protein, or it could also be an emotional story. I mean, when I say emotional story, I'm not saying it has to be false, but something which will connect with the consumer. So a claim should always be truthful and it has to be insightful. And I keep repeating this because I'm sure when you work with marketing teams or consumer research teams, you work with consumers and you have to come up with insights and then come up with the claims. I mean, if you're talking to young adults, the insight is going to be different, the language is going to be different. What you would use for a homemaker is not going to jive well with a young adult. So claims have to be insightful, resonate with the target group, and also sharp. I mean, it cannot be so verbose that it doesn't even connect with the consumer. Uh, and also, a claim should not be over-promising, misleading. I mean, you can't say any food can be a cure-all, or it's a magic bullet, it can do this and it can heal you from this. You cannot say it prevents you from diseases. I mean, at the most, you can say reduce the risk. So it can never be over-promising, misleading, and it should always have a context. And also, it should not put competition down. I mean, that's also important. That's business ethics. So this is a claim. Now, what are the touch points? Again, when we think of claim, we always, when we write down claims or generate claims, we think very pack oriented. Claim is not what you say only on pack. Claim is what you say everywhere about your product. It could be point of sale. It could be just a shelf strip on your retail store that could have a claim. Advertising, of course. Social media, I mean, that's really big these days. I mean, Instagram and Facebook, your website, A+ content for Amazon, e-commerce. So whatever you say in whichever channel will constitute a claim. And all these claims will have to be truthful and not misleading, not just your on-pack claim. But having said that, in industry, we always say when it's on pack, be a bit more conservative, because I mean, cylinders are etched, packs, laminates are printed, and it's very difficult if you go wrong in your claims on pack and if it doesn't meet regulation. But it doesn't mean in point of sale or social media you can say whatever which is not a fact. But it's just that you can take a little bit more creative liberty when it comes to other touch points. Whereas in pack, it is always better to be a bit more conservative. Now, let's see first how we can look at claims with a creative lens. So like I said, it is not about nutrients, it is about your product. So when you think about the product, think about the product journey. Think about where you're getting the raw materials from. Are you getting the best of some raw material? Does it have some special active? How are you handling the raw materials? How are you processing it? Does it have some special packaging? How are you distributing it? So it's basically the complete product story. Why I'm saying this is when you look at FSSAI, you will look at nutrient content, nutrient comparative, equivalence claims. And when you think of claims like that, it is a bit restrictive. So when you think about the product's complete cycle, you can be a lot more creative. To illustrate this, I just will take you through a couple of claim types. I mean, of course, some of these claims are covered in FSSAI, but this is just to give a different perspective. So first, let's look at statement claims. I'll also touch upon comparative claims. And statement claims is basically any fact you tell about your product. And there can be different types of statements about your product. So I will talk about the first 6, then show some examples, and then move on to the next 6. So the first one is a creative or emotional statement. I will show some examples for that. Endorsement, does anybody endorse your claim? It needn't be just some association. It could be a chef, a celebrity, whoever. Logo and seal-led statements. I mean, when we do consumer work, especially for pack design, we always find that consumers are attracted to a seal or a logo or a stamp on the front of pack. It immediately catches their attention. So that also could be a claim. Ingredient statements. So FSSAI never talks about ingredients. It does talk about it a bit about the pure, natural, and real in that category. but your ingredient can tell your complete product story. It could be either presence or absence. And of course, sensorial. Sometimes we forget to talk about the sensorials of the product. This can be such a huge connect. The consumer is already, when it's reading it, is having some expectations, and of course the product has to deliver those expectations, but it is already making those connections in his brain. So first, emotional statement claims. This usually is more a marketing activity. The ad agency or the marketing team usually will work on these. But simple things here. I mean, this pop chips, Katy Perry just say nothing fake about them. I mean, it's just a clever way of saying everything is real about this product. And if you look at Kind bars, which is available in the US, it's usually made with whole grains and nuts and unrefined sugars. So they just want to say, if anything good has to start, it can start here. Good karma starts here. I've tried to use more global examples than local examples because I know a lot of industry people have joined. So I just thought I'll keep it more global than show local examples. There are a couple of local examples as well. So this is an emotional statement. Like I said, endorsement. For example, Nabisco, what doctors prescribe for hunger pains. Of course, in India, we have restrictions about using the word doctors. But simple, it can be like what your mother would allow you to eat, or I mean, it is endorsement. When we say endorsement, it needn't be a big authority. It could be anybody. It could be a chef, it could be a mom, your friend will want to eat it. It's just looking at endorsing the product by somebody who the target consumer group will like. For example, if it's a gluten-free product, I mean, I'm just thinking maybe the Celiac Society of India will be happy to lend its name. Or if it's an Ayurvedic herb related product, maybe there are some Ayurvedic societies which will be happy to lend their name. So endorsements are very, very powerful claims, because it kind of tells the consumer that this has been validated by somebody they look up to or they relate to. Like I already said, logo and seal-led claims. Some logos and seals are already given. Like, I mean, if you're exporting and it's organic USDA, they have a seal. If it's fortified, we have our regulation for those commodities and logo, which is prescriptive. But then there are other things you can put in a stamp or a logo form, which will catch the consumer attention in the front of pack. Even simple things like right choice or my choice or smart choice can speak volumes about the product, almost saying that this is a good choice for you. Taste statement claims. Again, sometimes I feel a lot of products do not talk about how the product tastes. Finally, especially, I mean, I think world over, and especially in our country, I think taste is still king. I mean, if the product is not going to taste good, I don't think anybody is going to buy the product. And I came across an interesting study. It said they did the study in the United States, and they found that if they give nice names to the vegetables in the university canteens, in 5 university canteens, ultimate char-grilled asparagus or some glazed carrots or whatever, versus unnamed vegetables, where these names actually increased people to consume more vegetables. And it was the same dish, and this was published in Psychology Science. So when you talk about the taste of the product, it really helps the consumer to connect with the product better. And in sensorials, we always talk about taste, and we oftentimes forget to talk about texture. Texture also can be powerful, whether it's crunchy, crispy, airy, whatever it is. A texture statement claim can also be on the front of pack and tell about the product. This category is actually one of my favorites. It's ingredient-led statement claims. Actually, with just the ingredients, you can say so much. One of my favorites is this Bite bar, where it just says dates, pistachio, pumpkin, carrots, apples, plus that's all. It's such a powerful way of talking about the ingredients of this product, because it's just saying we have nothing else other than this. So what we have, you see it here, and it's in front of pack. You can talk about the fact that it is baked with real cheese. You can talk about most juice companies do this, how many oranges or kgs of fruits is there in a glass of juice, whether it has whole grains, multigrains. And interestingly, you can also talk about absence of certain ingredients, which is also actually in Asia Pacific. It is still more important to talk about the fact that it doesn't have, say, refined sugar, or doesn't have artificial colors and preservatives, or, for example, in the West, no high fructose corn syrup is a big claim. So absence of nutrients can also be a claim. So that was the first set. The second set is numerical-led statements. I mean, where you talk about numbers. Numbers actually connect better, again, than words. Nutrient or active content, or what do nutrients do? These are covered in FSSAI. I'll just show some examples, but I'm sure all of you are aware of this. Technology inspired. I mean, it could be any technology that is related to your product that you can talk about. And I also want to briefly touch upon the difference between an ingredient-led claim and a product claim. So when we talk about numbers, for example, look at this egg. I mean, when we just go say egg is full of protein, it has this, it has that, just simply just say it has 7 grams of protein, 70 calories. It's just so neat and powerful. I mean, you just are conveying this is what you're eating the egg for, or 50% whole grain, or 32 grams in a serving. And I'm sure all of you have seen this 100% real fruit, 100% real vegetables. These are quite common in our country. But numbers can actually be very powerful on front of back, because they don't occupy so much space, and it really catches the consumer's attention. This, I'm sure all of you are very familiar, high fiber, excellent source of this vitamin or protein, whatever. But you can also talk about all the other actives, like if it has antioxidants, catechins, and again, just like the absence of an ingredient, if there is an absence of a nutrient, which is going to be a powerful claim, you can talk about it, like virtually fat-free. So it's about presence and absence of nutrients or actives. Function claims, I'm sure this is pretty common. Iron for stamina, to stay active. But now, of course, there are a lot of other kind of products that are coming, which especially based on Ayurveda, where they talk about Ayurvedic herbs. Probiotic and prebiotics are also becoming quite popular now, when they talk about immunity and digestive system. These are some examples of function claims. Product technology, like I said, you can talk about any technology related to product. I'm just talking about processing here. So this is actually quite powerful. This pop chips, they just say think popped. Basically, it's fried, never baked. So it is just immediately telling the consumer, because still, whatever said and done, a fried snack is seen as junk. So think pop, never fried, never baked is just talking about the technology used to make the product on front of pack. For all these scale chips, dried, not fried, or vacuum fried. So especially when you have a new technology, or you are using a technology which is not being done by by the competitors, it is important to talk about the technology. Finally, product claims. So this again is very, very important when you're making claims on pack, because most products, we are still looking at ingredients or nutrients to anchor the claim, and not the product. When you have to have the product to make the claim, you should have done a clinical. And this is just a simple example. Just think of a brand X. It has these 5 herbs, contains 5 herbs known to boost immunity. So it says brand X has these herbs which are known to boost immunity, whereas brand X has been shown to enhance immunity, which means the whole product, it could be anything, a juice, drink, tea, whatever, has been enriched or fortified with micronutrients or these herbs, and it has been tested in a human clinical for them to say that it is now clinically proven or now proven to enhance immunity. So, I mean, even veterans can sometimes make this error because when you're looking at some artworks over and over again, it is very, very important, unless you have a clinical, not to link your product directly to the benefit, but link it through the actives or nutrients or herbs, whatever is there in the product. So that is about statement claims. I mean, and so I hope that gave you all a flavor as to how you need to look at your product with using different lens, and then coming up with claim statements. I want to briefly talk about comparative claims. Comparative claims actually can be to your own formula. I mean, suppose you've launched something 3 years back and you're launching a new improved version, you can talk about how it is better, and of course to competition. We will talk about some requirements of comparative claims when we talk about FSSAI. So you can again here talk about the ingredients, nutrients. You can also talk about performance of the product. It can be with taste. So again, when it's comparative, it needn't be just about nutrients. It can be about anything else. And the typical words you always use in comparative claims are less, reduce, more, increase, decrease, higher, lower. So these are some of the words that you use. Stating a fact. So again, in comparison, actually, I really like this lesser evil claim. It's actually for candy. Candy, of course, I mean, it is seen as junk and an indulging food. So by saying lesser evil, you're trying to tell the consumer you can be less guilty of eating this. So this pop chips here also, again, they interestingly talk about flavor, and at the same time they're saying it's half the fat. I'm sure they have a disclaimer saying half the fat compared to whatever fried chip or whatever, but all the flavor and half the fat. That's their front of pack claim. Deliciously nutritious, 45% less sugar than the leading brand. So when you make comparative claims, what becomes important is it is not just about analyzing your product and checking what your product is meeting in terms of requirements. If you are doing some comparative claim, say with a few brands in the category or with the leading brand, it becomes imperative that you analyze those products also. So in some sense, comparative claim is a stronger claim, and you need more substantiation for it, because it just doesn't stop with your product. You have to prove that other product has more or less of it. So you need to have analysis and stuff like that. So it is a slightly higher order claim and requires a little bit more work. And comparative claims, unless you really have solid data, you should do it not on pack, but in other modes of communication. If you have data and you can prove it, you can go on pack. So I hope all this gave you a glimpse of how you can look at claims slightly more differently. Of course, this is a webinar and we just have 30-40 minutes. What we actually do is we do this whole process in a workshop. It's a 1 to 2 day process depending on the products, what we want to achieve. And we use a lot of brainstorming techniques, be it mind mapping, role play, word association, product picture inspiration. So we use a whole lot of techniques, get a lot of people in the room to ideate and come up with claims. And in some workshops, we've come up with even 300 plus claims in a day. So it can be a very, very powerful thing to do, because what you have once you have done this workshop is actually a claims bank. I mean, of course, after you generate the claims bank and shortlist, you'll have to pass it through your regulatory team and regulatory lens. But you have a bank which you can use for your launch or relaunches. It's a great output to showcase to stakeholders and for them to pick and choose. And imagine this can go as input for communication to your PR agency or to your marketing team or ad agency. So they have already a fodder or a foundation to work on. Another thing which you can use these workshops for are for claim flattering. Suppose looking at an innovation funnel, you might not have all the data, but you have product ideas, or you have a product at a certain stage now, and for example, you want to move it to a product claim, ingredient to product claim, then you can see what stronger claims that you can make for the same product. And are these claims really powerful? Then you can check them with the consumer. And so will it justify the cost of doing the clinical? So you can use the claims workshop for many things depending upon the objective of the business. So now that we finished the creative part, we will move to the regulatory compliance. I'm sure all of you are aware of the FSSAI regulations for claims. We will quickly run through it, and I'll just show some examples for equivalence and comparative claims. I have to say I'm not a regulatory expert, but if there are some questions on regulation, I can try and answer. So in FSSAI, you have, of course, the nutrition claim, which talks about the content claim, example, source, enrich, and nutrient comparative claim, where you can say less and fewer, which we just talked about. So, but when you do a nutrient comparative claim, it should be a food from the same category. I mean, you can't compare rice and fruit. So so you have to compare foods, similar food or foods from the same category. And the FSSAI clearly says that the difference, especially for macronutrients and sodium, it should be 25%, be it if it's energy or protein. So the difference between the two products should be 25%. And it also says, and at least 25% in energy value or nutrient content, and a minimum absolute difference. So the absolute difference between those two nutrients you're comparing should be equal to what is defined as low or source in Schedule 1. So I will just tell you, I'll show you this using an example. It becomes easier. So it is 25% for macronutrients and sodium, and it's 10% for micronutrients. And if you're making a comparative claim, you have to give the percentage or fraction or the absolute amount close to the claim. I mean, if you're doing it on pack, it has to have that number next to the claim. So I'm just going to talk about an example here. So let's look at white rice versus brown rice and ragi. I've just taken fiber as an example. Like I said, you can't compare white rice with fruit. I mean, you can compare it with brown rice, and you can possibly compare it with a millet because they're all grains. So I have just taken the fiber content values for white rice, brown rice, ragi from IFCT. And if you see, when you compare white rice and brown rice, the difference is 1.62. The percent difference is 37%. So the 37% actually meets your 25% criteria. But it also says, and the difference, the absolute difference should beat the source of claim given in your schedule. So what is the requirement for source of fiber? 3 grams. And the absolute difference here is only 1.6. So actually, you cannot make a comparative claim based on these numbers between white rice and brown rice. Whereas if you take white rice and ragi, the percent difference is really high, 75. The requirement of source of fiber is again the same, 3 grams, but the absolute difference is 8 grams. So if you want to say ragi is so much more higher in fiber, you can compare ragi with white rice, but you can't do brown rice versus white rice based on these numbers. Okay, so I hope this is clear. We will move to the next claim, which is given in FSSAI, which is the equivalence claims. So here, what they're saying is you can compare two products. You can say contains the same amount of vitamin C as this food, or as much nutrient as this food. Now, what they have done this time is, because this claim was abused before. I mean, for example, you can compare your product with say almonds and say as much vitamin C as almonds, okay? But almonds is not known for vitamin C content. So what they have done now is, if you're using a reference food, so if you're comparing your food to egg for protein or vitamin C to an orange, whatever is the reference food should also meet the source of criteria. So if you look at, again, IFCT data, and I've again take fiber, pear is 4.46, so it is above the 3 gram criteria for fiber. Apple is only 2.59. So, and you have two formulations, X and Y. Y is only 2.7, so you cannot compare it. X is 3.5. So you can compare pear to your formulation X. You cannot compare your formulation X to an apple, because apple is not meeting, the reference food is not meeting the source claim. So actually this is a good thing. So we do not abuse the claim. So what you're comparing to is also a good source of that nutrient. The other claims in FSSAI are nutrient function, which all of us know, calcium good for your bones. Other function claims could be, for example, you could be adding an Ayurvedic active, or it could be catechins and antioxidants or probiotics. Basically, they help to improve some function or help to improve your health in your body. So those can be also seen as other function claim. And the reduction of disease risk claim, now we have clear guidelines, and the wordings can have a bit of flexibility, but they all have to meet the criteria which is given in Schedule 3. So this I'll not go into details, but this is there. And many products do not make these claims, but if you do make it, you have to say, for example, oats and beta-glucan and lowering cholesterol. That means one serving of oats should give that much soluble fiber, and the wordings are given as to what the claim should be, and you have to follow that. There are also other claims. This I'm sure is a favorite for many because this no added sugar claim also is quite popular in our country. So when can you say no added sugar? And it's given very clearly in the claims and advertising guidelines. It is not just about sucrose. It is about any kind of sugar you add. It can be honey, molasses, corn syrup. And also we cannot hide sugar by adding sweetened concentrated juices or sweetened chocolate, dry fruit paste and everything. So it clearly says when you can say no added sugar, only when these criteria are met. And the same thing for salt. I mean, before we could just say no added salt, but there could be soy sauce if it's a Chinese savory product or whatever. So it clearly says you cannot make the claim if you have soy sauce or fish sauce or some things in your product. And of course, the same with preservatives. So when you say non-additive claims, neither your product or it shouldn't come through raw materials, or you should be careful about your processing aids when you're making a non-addition claim. So that is about the FSSAI perspective of claims, which are fairly prescriptive, makes you think maybe very unidimensional. Whereas when you look at it from a product story point of view, you can come up with more claims. But having said that, any claim you make has to meet the regulation and has to be validated by your regulatory and legal departments. I'll also talk a little bit about claim substantiation. And when do you need claim substantiation? I mean, sometimes we think about claim substantiation only when we are close to launch or when we are finalizing the pack. But actually, if there are things that in your product, I mean, say there are some new actives or whatever, it is important that you do a literature search or look at some studies which have been done using the same ingredient or active to see whether you can support your claim. It will be a disaster if you're starting to find out very late in the game that there is not enough literature to support or write support your claim, and you cannot support whatever the marketing team wants to say. So I think a dossier will always have one draft in what you can say maybe an idea space, where you're sure that these claims can be supported. And then, of course, at the launch stage, because you would have deliberated with many claims and finally you would have decided what to go on pack and in communication, then you make a dossier for those claims. But it is very, very important, even if it is the simplest of claims and very well established, for any new product or products, it's important to, it could be just a 2-page supporting document, it could be a 60-page dossier. It is very important to have a supporting document. Now, here I just want to talk about the product claim, because for the other claims, whatever is current relevant scientific literature, I mean, for calcium and bone health, I don't think we need to think too much. But suppose there are some things that are changing in science and in literature, it is important for the food manufacturer to update his claims accordingly. So I want to talk a little bit about product claim. A product claim is when you have a very well designed human study. It has to, the results have to be statistically significant. First of all, the clinical has to be registered. And last but not least, FSSAI clearly says that you have to publish it in a peer reviewed journal. Then only you can make a product claim. So a product claim is definitely a very high order claim. And in terms of wordings, FSSAI is pretty flexible, and as long as you have like a WHO document or well-established journals to support, and for some things like micronutrients, there is enough literature already available, and you don't have to worry about doing an extensive search. Fortification claims, I just wanted to touch upon this. This is there in the fortification regulation, and these are for the products which is prescribed in the fortification regulation. Of course, these claims seem very prescriptive, and again, it also says there can be some flexibility in wordings which are used for these micronutrients. And when it comes to micronutrients, especially, you need to have an RDA. The regulation says that you can use ICMR, and for things which are not present in ICMR, you can look at WHO or Codex. Of course, the FSSAI website, not in its main page, has last year given a PDF file with all the RDAs. You can refer to that. But otherwise, ICMR and the WHO give all the RDAs for all age groups, which you might need to make claims on micronutrients. Now, how do you start writing a dossier? The best way to do it is first, of course, the initial draft that when you do it in ideas phase, you might just be putting all the information together just to make sure it is there. But at the launch stage, you just need to first of all organize your claims. What claims are we making? Is it ingredient? Is it nutrient content? Am I saying no artificial things? So do I have all certificates from my supplier? If it's 100% juices, what is the supporting document? Or am I saying 3 oranges in a glass? So how am I equating the bricks? So all the supporting document need to be there. Nutrient content and comparative. Again, when I said comparative, you need to have analysis of your competition, or at least their label information, depending on what you're comparing with. These are fairly simple, but when it comes to other function claim, especially Ayurveda or antioxidants, it becomes a bit, I mean, I'll say it requires a little bit more work because with Ayurveda, you don't have very clear papers out there. You might have to look at review papers and whatever, and the dosages can be very, very different. So you'll have to really scan through a lot of literature to make sure your dossier is foolproof. And of course, disease risk reduction, it is fairly prescriptive in FSSAI. So as long as you meet this much amount of beta glucan or this much potassium when it comes to hypertension, and your serving delivers that, and you have all the data to support it, they've done the science for you. So you just have to now support it based on the amount present in your product. So supporting documents vary depending on claims. It can be like 2 pages to 60 pages. For any product, you'll have to have your theoretical nutrition profiling because you do this theoretical one to compare with your analytical one. And I already said for ingredient-based claims, you need to get supplier information. When we look at literature study, what are we looking at? So it also depends. If you want to really, you might not be able to do a product clinical, but you are making a strong claim based on, say, some herbs. So what are the kind of literature available? So there is a hierarchy there as well. So review papers which lead you to lot of clinicals or citations, you know, so that can be a very good starting point. Next is human clinicals, and then also if you find meta-analysis, which actually takes data from many clinicals done in the past and summarizes and tells you what is working. Those kind of papers are very, very useful. Then animal studies and in vitro studies. Why this order is human clinicals? I mean, no two bodies are same, and to always extrapolate in vitro data or animal studies to human population to make strong claims can be very misleading. So this is the hierarchy of literature search if you want to support claims which are not fairly well established. So that is a bit about substantiation. And finally, this is my last slide. When it comes to product claim, this is not there in the advertising and claims regulation, but it's there in the nutraceutical regulation. When you do clinicals, you can use the word shown when you've done one human clinical, one human intervention study. And to say use the word proven, you need to have done at least more than one. I'm not sure why it is not mentioned in the advertising and claims regulation, but it's very clearly defined in the nutraceutical regulation because one study is just not enough to prove the product. And of course, for a clinical, you will have to have a well-defined design, run the clinical, it takes a year, and then you have to analyze the results, publish it in a peer-reviewed journal, then you have the dossier, and then only you can make the claim. So if you really are looking at product claims, you need to actually budget 2 to 3 years before you can make this claim. So I guess that's it from me. So I'm happy to take questions, and thank you for your patient listening.
Thank you so much, Meera. That was, I think, an excellent session. And I'll just give it about a minute for anybody else to type in. And I have noted down all your questions. Some, in the interest of time, we've also answered. Yeah, but I'll just give it a minute. If there's any other questions, we can just take them on.
Rinka, you're going to call out the questions, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thanks.
There's just one more question. Let me just note that down. Okay, so I think we'll just get started with some of the questions. And I think there are some questions in the area of, publication of your claims and substantiation of claims. So let me just cover that. So there are a couple of questions in this space. Does specific scientific paper or review article is it sufficient to substantiate the claim?
I mean, no, I'm not clear. So is it a review paper or a specific science? See,
Yeah, so literature,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
think the question is that is review,
Rinka, I
and
can't hear you.
hello?
Rinka?
Just one second. Hello, is that clear?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah. No, I think the question is, in the absence of a clinical, really, if we're just doing a scientific paper that you have referred to or a review article, is that sufficient to substantiate claims?
See, like I said, if standard things for micronutrients, I mean, I keep talking about calcium in bones or iron and stamina or iodine and mental development, those you don't even, I'm sure you can just look at any scientific paper or textbook because that's fairly established knowledge. But if you're looking at, say, herbs and say if you're looking at curcumin and talking about skin health or something, it is just not one paper. You have to actually look at quite a few review papers. And also, like I said, some human intervention studies. So the dossier will actually be a summary of a lot of papers because the dosages could be different, and you give reference to many of these journals. The journals have to be credible, and you give importance to review papers or human clinicals over in vitro and animal studies. So it cannot be one, but yes, all this information put together in a dossier can help you help support a claim as long as it is an ingredient claim, not a product claim. So this is just to help you say turmeric is known for skin health or something, not to say my juice can give you glowing skin. So again, to support an ingredient or an active based claim. For a product, you'll have to do a clinical. I hope it answers the question.
Yeah, just another question which is related to this. Which well-established journal is acceptable for nutraceuticals and health supplement products?
Oh, I can't think of something which can come to the top of my mind, but when you do actually literature review, it's really important to not use regular Google, like go to Google Scholar or go to some JSTAR and look at journals. I mean, for nutrition, I can say things like American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, British Journal of Nutrition, and all that. I cannot think of nutraceuticals. Maybe I'll come back and let you know, but I can't think of a journal name on top of my mind.
Yeah, just to add to what Meera is saying, I think there is a process, of course, for making sure that if you've done a clinical, and that needs to be in a peer-reviewed journal, published in a peer-reviewed journal, right? Before, maybe Meera, you want to just add a little bit about that point, because that could be your American Journal of Clinical Nutrition and things like that, but they need to be peer-reviewed journals.
Yeah. There's also one question I can see in the chat, is EFSA suitable? Yes, EFSA is also excellent to look at claim substantiation. Of course, EFSA is a lot more strict than US FDA, but it's a very good place to look for claims and support. So you can use dossiers from EFSA to support your claim.
Yeah. So there's another set of series of questions around the kind of claims for product claims. So for example, can I mention words like immunity, heart, energy, brain as product names? Product is a trail mix. So you're asking, I think, can the brand or the sub-brand be called as heart something or energy something, right? So
that's more a regulatory question, but I can say that I think now FSSAI is coming quite hard on claims like that. I mean, if there is words, say, like fresh or health or whatever is actually a brand name, you'll have to actually give a disclaimer saying that this is it's just a brand name and it's got nothing to do with the product or something. So I am not absolutely sure, but if you ask me, I think in the current scenario, it is a no. Maybe Rinka, you can
Let me add to that from a regulatory lens. So using words like heart, energy, brain, etc. is actually a no-no. You can only say such things in the name of a sub-brand also, or a product name, by very clearly putting a rider at the bottom of the, and it's a certain font size as well that's been specified, where you need to say this is a trademark and it is not characteristic of the product. So there is a specific language, font size, all of that needs to be put down on the claim. Yeah. Then there are some questions around the same thing. When my product contains turmeric and ginger, shall we claim it as an immunity booster? Now you're asking whether the product can be claimed as an immunity booster. I think there's a process to it, and Meera, you might want to cover that.
Yeah, I mean, like I again said, there is a difference between an ingredient-led claim and a product-led claim. If your product contains certain levels of turmeric and ginger, and again, this is where literature will help to make sure, or even the Ayurveda pharmacopoeia, which says how much to add to give a credible dosage. You have to say turmeric and ginger are known to boost immunity. You cannot say suppose your product is tea, my tea can help boost immunity. So that is misleading. Though the consumer might think it is this product, but in terms from a regulatory perspective, you have to be very, very clear that you're linking the ingredient in the front of pack, like showing the herbs, or this herb blend will help to boost immunity, so that it is very, very clear that it is the ingredient which is delivering the benefit and not the product. And that's how your dossier will also be written. And in case you have questions, you can show that this is based on Ayurveda literature. And also there have been some clinicals that are done with turmeric and ginger, and that's how we're supporting it.
Yep. Similarly, another question around chili powder, and it says, can we use the claim 100% chili powder for spice powders category of products?
100% chili powder. Yeah, I mean, maybe a better thing would be to, because there is a lot of adulteration in spice powders, it can be a powerful claim. You can say 100% chili powder and 0% adulterants or colors or whatever. I'm sure that should be possible. Rinka, your view?
Just to add to that, from again a regulatory lens, I would say is that the data you need to have to support this claim is extremely important through your entire supply chain, ensuring there are no things which are coming into your product apart from the chili powder. So while you may not be intentionally adding anything, but if there's something which is coming because of your supply chain, you would need to ensure that it doesn't come through, and that is very, very critical. Yeah. Okay, for comparative claims on sensory, are there specific certified bodies, organizations, after which only this claim can be made, or we can get it done from in-house, etc., like Tasty Protein Ever? For example, a claim like Tasty Protein Ever.
I'm not sure whether there are certified bodies, but if it has to be good practice, I mean, it shouldn't be in-house. Like you can do maybe a central location test, or do it with a whole bunch of consumers where you give your product versus other products, and it has to be a statistically significant number. And then you can come up with claims like 9 out of 10 people prefer our protein product, or whatever that is. But again, it has to be well designed, just like a clinical has to be well designed, and it has to have statistically significant differences. You can't just do it in-house with 10 people from your office and say it's okay, because the person who is going to pull you up is going to be competition, and they will ask for the data. So it is good to maybe get a market research agency or somebody to do a proper consumer test.
Yes, and just again to add to this, even through the ASCI, etc., they do have certain requirements that it has to be a study which is, like Meera mentioned, has to be statistically valid. So it could be in multiple cities, it could be large numbers that you need to have statistically valid data. A lot of this is used in terms of sensory claims, etc., in the personal care industry. If you would see, a lot of the claims that are used there is just based on consumer usage. So this is a powerful way to make consumer usage claims. where you're essentially giving them what the consumer said. So let's say if it's about, 1,000 people, about 900 people say something, that is something that you can make a claim on. Yeah. Then there is something around, is there any software to calculate nutritional values? I'm not so sure about that, but you can check that.
No, I mean, many big companies have their own software where they have input their raw material data, and then you just plug in the formulation percentage and it generates the nutrition facts table. But otherwise, good old Excel will do the job, but you'll have to put your raw material nutrient profile to generate your final product. So, yeah.
There's another question around, making a natural claim. So if any added ingredient to food, example, soy protein isolate, is used to increase protein content, can it still be called a natural source of protein, or can this be claimed?
No, I think natural is very clear in the new regulation when you can say natural and when you can say made with natural ingredients. So it's only processes like drying, removing moisture, and very basic processing. And made with natural ingredients is when, again, those ingredients are, I mean, definitely not like a soy protein isolate or where they've undergone minimal processing, and you put them together in a product. So natural for a soy protein isolate is not going to work. And you can look it up. It's in the claims and advertising guidelines in the very end, when you can use the word natural if it's a single ingredient product, and you can use the phrase made with natural ingredients, and it clearly defines what it should be. And soy protein isolate goes through a lot of process and it's extracted, and it cannot be natural.
Right. Another claim is, can we make claims for certain age group food like geriatric foods or good for CVD patients? And similarly, somebody's asked, does the Indian regulation have a claim for cholesterol reduction when phytosterols, for example, are used in functional food? So these are very fun.
Yeah, I think phytosterols is there in Schedule 3. I can pull it out and send. It is there. And geriatric specifically for seniors, it's not there. But you look at Schedule 3 of Claims and Advertising Guidelines. If you go to the FSSAI website, I think in the food regulations, I think it's number 16, the document. And you go to Schedule 3, it clearly talks about when you can say lowers cholesterol or hypertension or osteoporosis, and also actually sterols versus heart health. All those claims are clearly defined with dosage and even the wordings for the claim.
Yes. And I would really urge everyone to really go and read up the claims and advertising guidelines by the FSSAI. It's on their website. It's actually extremely clear, the document, in terms of what it allows and what it doesn't allow. So a lot of people have asked questions around rich in protein and fiber, which I'm just replying to right now because we don't need to spend time on that, because those are all very clearly defined in the FSSAI. Yeah. There are some questions around, do regulations also require you to state the dosage or frequency of use when you make a product claim?
Actually, for even disease risk reduction, you have to say how many times or how many servings per day. And if you are doing a product claim, yes. Actually, if you see some of the MFDs which have done clinical, it may not be on the front of pack, but they will say based on 2 servings per day. So the clinical result is based on those 2 servings. So somewhere on the pack, you have to communicate what is the serving size, or how much of the product they have to use, or how much was used in the clinical to give the benefit. That information has to be there on pack.
Yeah. Again, there are some more questions on natural, but I think again, this won't work. If we use an emulsifier like polysulfate along with other natural ingredients, can we go for all natural claim? Yeah, this would be a no.
No, yeah.
I think Yeah, there's one more question around how to apply for food for specific application of an ingredient with many published clinical studies in peer-reviewed index journals. Meera, you want to take that, or I can just also just give my input in this?
You can give your input. Go ahead,
Yeah.
please.
So, Dharmesh, I think if this is a question from you, essentially, if it's a novel food ingredient for which there may be a lot of published clinical studies in peer-reviewed journals, you need to apply. There is a specific application process for getting approvals for novel food ingredients. In fact, today in FSSAI, there is no approval process for proprietary foods. But the moment it is a novel food ingredient, it needs to go through an application process. It will get reviewed by the scientific panels in the FSSAI, and then it goes in for an approval. That's how ingredients like phytosterol esters, etc., have got approved in the country. Yeah. So I think that's about all the questions we had. So thank you very much, everyone, for your questions. And thanks a lot, Meera, for a fabulous session. And yeah, and I hope it was extremely useful for everyone. Should you all have any specific questions, please feed it back to Seema Sudan, who's been emailing you, and we will get back to you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe. Bye-bye.